Hello, hello. All right. I actually, this is an announcement, I guess. Video 400, Banzai, all the good stuff. Uh, I don't know how heavy it is, but here, the title of this video is To Be of Help versus To Be of Service. I don't know why. I think sometimes I don't actually like show you the the actual note. The To Be of Help versus To Be of Service. There are like four videos that are just literally just kind of like the next video after this is what's the difference between pretending and faking. And playing with society versus playing the game of society. Right? There's a difference between kind of like I don't know, it's just different perspective on different sides, I guess. I'm openly just going through this. What's the difference between to be of help and to be of service? Uh, I noticed this because I was reading a book, and I think the book was called. Sorry, the book was called. It's the guy who wrote the Untethered Soul, right? And forgot what it was. So, all right. Anyways, I'll get it. I'll get to. Oh, the Surrender Experiment is the name of the book, and super beautiful book. It came at the right time, I guess. It's funny, everything happens at the right time. When people kind of like surprise you with something positive, it's the right time. When people kind of go like fuck off, it's the right time. We have to see these things this way, right? But in the book, he never says help, or at least if when he does, it's not as impactful as when he's expressing his relationship with service. And I noticed the difference as well with a lot of like kind of the difference between like when somebody is discussing being of service to others versus when somebody's discussing help. I think help comes from a lot of arrogance and service comes from a lot of humility. Probably both of them point at the same thing, right? But service is coming out of me while help is for me. When you help somebody, you're kind of doing what you want to do, right? When you help somebody, yeah, I think helping kind of takes away, service gives. When you're trying to be of service, you're kind of like looking at yourself and going, everything about me could be utilized. So everything about me could actually be outputted or inputted into something any way basically it could potentially can. I think that's the humility behind it, right? When it comes to help, it seems like there's a certain kind of like thing happening for help to exist. Like somebody needs help in math, somebody needs help fixing his car, somebody needs help with something. Whilst to be of service seems to be more like, how can I be of service? Like, anything, right? Like, let's openly discuss what are the things that we can like go dive into. Yeah, it's kind of capitalized differently right now. I personally don't really like the word help because I think the word help is very egotistical. Yeah. So I did a video once about the difference between being an egoist and an egotist. An egotist works with the image, and I think helping somebody is basically you just working with the image that you have of yourself, or just you're either expanding on the image you have of yourself, just working with the image you have of yourself, kind of like imposing the image you have of yourself, even maybe on others. Whilst to be of service doesn't seem to like captivate the same feel. The reason why I don't like help is because ultimately nobody actively can help anyone. Because anytime you're attempting to help somebody, you're kind of being a bit more destructive than you think you are. And maybe that's the nature of human beings. Like it's not one thing that works that makes everything that moves makes you kind of like take a step forward and change. It's many things kind of fall in place for you to be able to connect them. And that's the theme of how we view the world, right? How we construct our reality, how we observe, how we kind of like realize the triggers that are within our environment that allow us to kind of build a certain form in our head. It's a tricky thing. When you're helping somebody, you're kind of like highlighting something specific and everything that. So if we're, so I'm imagining a situation and somebody helps, and then the situation, there's another situation. So there's this transition between here we were and then now here we are, and there's either help or service in between. Logical reasoning, why the, I don't know, why not? And if somebody was to be helped, then ultimately a different parts that are needed in order to combine and have a different event become like the valid reality are going to have to be dealt with, sorted out, handled. So the difference between help and service, with service, it kind of like smooths the transition of these kind of like different things for the person itself that needs to kind of jump from one event in his life to another. Whilst when it comes to help, somebody else comes and fills in the gaps. So I'm not really moving from one event to another. I'm just surpassing the event. I'm surpassing whatever's in front of me. But it feels like with help, you're still in the same event. You didn't really change. You didn't really adapt. You didn't really evolve. You didn't really like take the steps forward that make you kind of like see the world differently. What you did was have somebody do the work for you. Help. Whilst of service, I think like I get it, man. I don't know. I think it's in our nature to be of service. I think it's the nature of human beings is to kind of like take something they know and instantly go and maybe like teach it or just kind of like find a way to explore it. And it's funny because everything around us kind of like, remember, anytime you're excited about something, the first thing you want to do is talk about it. Anytime you're bothered with something, the first thing you want to do is talk about it. Anytime you're upset, happy, it's always that you kind of like want to express that part of you. And I think it's if this form of expression normally comes out talking about something is temporary, going through the actual experience. So when it comes to bothering, or when it comes to let's say the negative stuff in life, you actually going out of yourself in order to do things differently, or at the very least, kind of contribute differently. Because ultimately, when you take responsibility for yourself, what you're doing is you're reflecting on how you were, and you didn't like that position. We're only talking about the negative thing. You don't really like that position, but also like that position existed for others around you, for the realities of the people around you. So effectively, what you do when you take responsibility is kind of like project how that responsibility needs to be on the outside world. And by doing that, you actually learn how to be a bit more forgiving to yourself. Because ultimately, we are a direct reflection of how we, our existence in other people's realities is a direct reflection of how we are actually presenting ourselves, or at the very least, how we're highlighting the biases that people relate to. All right, so I don't know how fun this is for somebody to kind of like listen. I'm barely following up with it, but I'm really trying to like help and service. Where do they enter in my life? Is when you kind of make a decision and you want to take a step forward. And that's where you either need help, like take that part, or kind of like need somebody to be of service, as in like support me while I'm doing this. Yeah, service is very much support. That's the humble part of it. At the very least, that's how it's kind of like feeling. And at one point, I was discussing the responsibility between of us kind of handling the events of our lives. And in a way, for us to overcome them, it's always through service, because service is kind of like going outside of ourselves and taking responsibility. But even when you learn from your mistakes and you're just kind of like trying to help people, you've only learned from the mistakes that you imposed on yourself. You never considered the environment and how you interacted with it. So, what's the difference between to be of help and to be of service? I think one is arrogant and opinionated, help. I think service is basically a bit more, definitely humble, but a lot more personal. Like there's a pride in what you're doing, whilst with helping, you kind of just want to feel good. All right, it's a video, yeah.